Hi there, I'm Hillary Marlowe. You know, not every family throws you out because you refuse to take care of their pet. Mine did. The night my sister yelled, "Get out of my sight!" I thought that was the worst of it. But it wasn't. That was just the start of something darker. They didn't just want me gone. They rewrote the story, made me the villain, drained everything I'd ever worked for. They signed papers behind my back, erased my name, and smiled for the cameras while they did it. And you know what's worse? I kept asking myself, how far can your own family go before you finally break? The Marlowe estate always smelled like roses and old money. That night in June 2015, it felt more like a prison. Chandelier lights too bright, marble floors too cold, the air too heavy to breathe. I stood at the edge of the grand foyer, the stage for every flawless family dinner we ever staged for the world. Behind closed doors, though, we were anything but flawless. Astrid moved across the room like she owned it, because in a way, she did. She'd always been the favorite, the star, the one who sparkled under our parents' gaze. I was the flaw in the frame, the one they wished they could airbrush out. Dinner was over. Our parents had vanished upstairs. Only Astrid and I remained, silence stretching thin between us like something ready to snap. She folded her arms, her perfect smile gone. "You're gonna take care of my cat, Hillary. That's not a request." I blinked at her. "You can't be serious." She stepped closer, voice cold despite the thick Texas air. "I messed up, and if the press finds out Mr. Coleman's cat got sick under my watch, it'll be everywhere tomorrow, so you'll take the blame. Make it look like you were the one responsible." I shook my head. "Number, I'm not covering for you. Not this time." For a second, her face cracked. Then it hardened. "You ungrateful brat. You think you're better than me? After everything Mom and Dad gave you?" My throat tightened, but I stood my ground. "I won't lie for you." Her voice rose, sharp and final. "Get out of my sight. You're no longer part of this family." The words hit like a slap, and before I could reply, our mother's voice floated from the top of the staircase. "Maybe it's for the best," Corinne said coolly, swirling wine in her glass. "You've always been a burden." That was the part that gutted me, not Astrid's cruelty, but how easily our mother agreed. I didn't say a word. I grabbed my old backpack, already half-packed with what little was mine. My father stood by the fireplace, eyes fixed on the flames, not even glancing my way. I waited for him to speak. He didn't. As I reached the door, Astrid called out one last time, "Sugar sweet. Good luck out there, sweetheart. The world's gonna eat you alive." Outside, the night air hit me like a slap, hot and heavy. I walked without looking back, the mansion glowing behind me like a bad joke. By the time I reached the bus stop downtown, it was past midnight. I sat on a cold bench, backpack at my feet, everything finally sinking in. I thought that was the worst of it. I was wrong. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it. When I finally checked, the headlines were everywhere. Marlowe heiress abandons dying animal. A daughter's betrayal. They'd rewritten the story overnight. The family PR machine had spun it perfectly. I was the heartless daughter who walked out on a helpless cat and a loving family. Photos of me everywhere, paired with comments like, "What a monster! Typical spoiled meltdown. She's cold." No one asked why I left. No one wanted the truth. I spent the day wandering Dallas in a fog, watching strangers' reflections in cafe windows, seeing the villain they'd made me into staring back. By evening, I found myself on an overpass, staring at the freeway lights bleeding into the dark horizon. That was when I understood what it meant to be erased. The sky shifted overhead, streetlights flickering like the universe couldn't decide whether to leave me in the dark or drag me back to the light. I slipped my phone into my pocket and whispered into the empty night, "They think they've buried me, but they'll regret it." That sentence became my armor. For months, it was the only thing holding me together. A year had passed since the night I walked away from the Marlowe estate with nothing but an old backpack and my name. By summer 2016, I'd stitched together a fragile life in South Dallas. a rented room above Mara's diner, grease-stained uniforms, aching feet from double shifts. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I didn't belong to them anymore. Most nights, I closed up the diner past midnight, wiping counters while the neon sign outside flickered like it might give out. Sometimes Mara would leave a note beside a slice of pie. "Keep going, kiddo. You're tougher than they think." I needed that reminder more than she knew. One Tuesday night, as the last customer shuffled out, Mara handed me an envelope. "Some official-looking thing for you," she said casually. "From the court." My stomach dropped the second I saw it, cream-colored, stamped with the state seal. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of my narrow bed, envelope heavy in my hands. When I finally opened it, the words punched me square in the chest. Notice of liability. Animal welfare, case number 15-7021. My name was there, not as a witness, as the legal guardian. Legal guardian, Hillary Marlowe. I read it twice. 3 times. At the bottom, my signature, supposedly mine, accepting responsibility for Astrid's cat during an open investigation. The same case she tried to dump on me the night they cut me loose, but I never signed anything. Attached were more documents, fabricated statements, fake witness reports, all twisting me into the villain. I sat there shaking, my mother's voice echoing in my head. "You've always been a burden." And now they weren't just erasing me, they were rewriting me into their lies. The next few days passed in a blur. I showed up at the diner, smiled at customers, poured coffee like nothing was wrong. But something inside me cracked. Friday night, Mara found me zoning out at the register. "You okay, sweetheart?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Something like that." When I got back upstairs, a small envelope sat wedged under my door. No return address. Inside, a typed note. "Stay silent, or everyone will know who you really are." And a USB drive. My stomach twisted as I plugged it into my laptop. The video was grainy, shaky footage of me, or someone who looked like me, yelling at a cat. But the voice was off, the movements unnatural, edited, faked. At the end, a caption in bold white letters. Hillary Marlowe caught on camera abusing a helpless animal. My blood ran cold. They weren't finished with me. They were building a story so rotten, so convincing, no one would ever question it. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding like it might break free from my chest. The next few nights, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Astrid's voice, fake sweet and sharp. Saw my mother's cool stare. Felt the chains they kept tightening around me, even from miles away. But I kept showing up to work, because bills don't wait for your world to fall apart. One night, long after closing, I sat alone at the diner counter, neon light buzzing outside, the weight of everything pressing down. I pulled the court letter and the USB from my bag, staring at them like they might catch fire. For a year, I'd tried to disappear, to build something of my own. But they wouldn't let me. I pressed my forehead against the cool tabletop, breath shaking. Tears threatened, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I whispered into the empty diner, voice sharp as steel. "You want war? You'll get it." That night, after whispering those words into the empty diner, I climbed the stairs, crawled into my narrow bed, and stared at the ceiling until morning. I had no plan, no power, just a fragile spark of defiance burning in my chest. The months that followed weren't pretty. They were survival. I kept my head down, worked double shifts, scraped together enough to enroll in night classes. I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. If they wanted to break me, I was determined to make myself unbreakable. By spring 2017, my life looked almost normal from the outside. I earned my GED. I saved every spare dollar. And finally, I signed a lease on a small storefront on Polk Street, a pet care shop, fittingly ironic after how they'd weaponized a sick cat to ruin me. By day, I stocked shelves and rang up customers. By night, I sat in the back booth at Mara's diner, flipping through business textbooks and contract law. Little by little, I built something that was mine. Until one phone call shattered everything. It was a Thursday evening in late May. I had just locked up the shop and was about to head back to my apartment when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but instinct made me answer. Miss Marlowe? A crisp, unfamiliar voice. This is James Henley. I represent your family. My stomach tightened. I have unfortunate news, he continued smoothly. Your mother is gravely ill. She's requested to see you. I didn't respond. The words felt scripted, like every lie I'd grown up hearing. She's in critical condition, he added. It would mean the world to her if you'd visit. Against my better judgment, I said yes. Maybe some part of me still hoped she had a heart buried beneath the ice. The next evening, I stood once more at the towering white walls of the Marlowe estate. Everything looked the same. The polished floors, the sterile perfection. But I wasn't the same girl who'd walked away 2 years ago. The housekeeper led me upstairs in silence. My mother lay in bed, pale and thin, wires and monitors surrounding her. Look who finally showed up, she rasped, her voice brittle but sharp. She reached for my hand, her skin cold. Hillary, I made mistakes, but you're still my daughter. Her eyes filled with tears. She spoke of regret, of wanting to make things right. I wanted to believe her. When she slid a stack of documents toward me, just routine, in case something happens, I hesitated. But her hand trembled, and guilt outweighed suspicion. I signed. Weeks passed. She recovered. Quickly, almost miraculously. By summer, the machines disappeared, her color returned, and the concern in her voice faded like it had never existed. Then came the letter. Notice of asset transfer. My signature at the bottom. According to the documents, I had voluntarily handed over the only inheritance I'd quietly clung to, my grandmother's trust fund. It now belonged to Corinne Marlowe for management purposes. My pulse roared in my ears. She wasn't dying, she never was. I'd been played. Again. But they didn't stop there. A few days later, Mara walked into my shop after closing, an envelope in her hand and something heavy in her eyes. You should see this, she said quietly. Inside, a formal notice from the Dallas Scholarship Board, scholarship withdrawn due to loss of funding. It wasn't addressed to me. It was for Lila, Mara's daughter, the girl who'd worked beside me at the diner, who called me her big sister, who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. The donor who pulled the funding, Gareth Marlowe. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. They hadn't just come for me. Now they were hurting the people who stood by me. That night, I sat outside the diner, staring at the dark sky while Mara sat beside me in silence. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. After a long stretch of quiet, I finally spoke. They can tear down everything around me, but I'll never let them break me. That night outside Mara's diner, I made myself a promise. I kept it tucked close to my chest like a secret weapon, something I'd whisper to myself whenever the weight of the past threatened to crush me. 2 years passed. Dallas changed, but the ghost of my family's shadow never quite left me. By 2019, I had done what they said I never could. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something of my own. SafePaw had grown from a dusty storefront to a recognizable brand. We'd just signed our first national deal with PetMart, one of the largest pet store chains in Texas. The ink was barely dry when I found myself sitting in a sleek boardroom on the 20th floor of an office building downtown, surrounded by suits and smiles. That afternoon, we finalized the terms. My lawyer shook my hand. The marketing team congratulated me. You did it, Hillary, they said. You're the real deal. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe it. After the meeting, I walked outside into the crisp autumn air, phone buzzing in my bag. I figured it was Mara or one of the staff, probably checking in. When I finally pulled it out, I froze. 34 missed calls, dozens of texts, and a string of news notifications lighting up my screen. Astrid Marlowe makes shocking family revelation on national TV. Marlowe heiress accuses estranged sister of animal cruelty. Hillary Marlowe, the sister who abandoned everything. My stomach dropped. I unlocked one of the video links. There she was, Astrid, sitting across from a morning talk show host, perfectly styled, smiling sweetly like she hadn't been sharpening knives behind that grin for years. "Some people pretend to care about animals," she said, voice dripping with that signature fake innocence, "but can't even keep their own life together. My family tried everything to help her, but some people just want to watch the world burn." The audience laughed politely. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My phone kept vibrating as social media exploded with comments, retweets, hashtags, people dissecting my name, my life, my past. Pictures of me from years ago resurfaced. The worst ones. The ones my mother's PR team always kept on standby. By the time I made it back to SafePaw's office, my inbox was flooded. Waiting for me at the top of the pile was an email from PetMart's corporate office. Subject: contract suspension. I clicked, my pulse racing. Due to unforeseen public concerns regarding Ms. Hillary Marlowe's personal history, we regret to inform you that our partnership is suspended until further notice. My legs buckled beneath me. I sank into the nearest chair, reading the message over and over, hoping I'd somehow misunderstood. But the words didn't change. Everything I'd worked for, the years of grinding, of bleeding for every inch forward, shattered in a matter of minutes, because my sister knew how to pull strings and smile for the camera. That evening, I sat in the corner of my apartment, the TV playing on mute, replaying Astrid's interview like a nightmare on loop. I could still hear her voice. My sister chose to walk away. She never cared about family. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to disappear. Instead, I sat there frozen, watching the headlines scroll across the screen, feeling the walls close in. They had dragged my name through the mud for the last time. That night, those words played on repeat inside my head like a war drum. I didn't sleep, couldn't. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, staring at the empty contract from PetMart and the headlines still lighting up my phone. The following months weren't easy. Cleaning up the damage Astrid caused took everything I had left. I spent days in crisis meetings with my staff, assuring them we weren't going under. Nights were filled with damage control calls, PR statements, and endless apologetic emails to clients who were now hesitant to associate with my name. But slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt. SafePaw was dented, but still breathing. So was I. By January 2020, I thought maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind me. That illusion shattered on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. It was late afternoon when the knock came. I was in my office, reviewing inventory reports, the faint hum of traffic outside blending with the low chatter of my employees in the next room. When I opened the door, a man in a gray suit handed me a thick envelope, nodded politely, and walked away without a word. My heart sank before I even looked inside. Legal documents. The Marlowe family name stamped at the top. I sank into my chair, the weight of the envelope heavy in my lap. The lawsuit was clear. Defamation, libel, emotional distress. They were suing me, my own parents and Astrid, for millions of dollars. Their claims? That I'd knowingly spread false stories intended to damage the Marlowe family's public image. That I'd fabricated scandals and weaponized private family matters for personal gain. I read the accusations 3 times before I could even process them. This wasn't just another smear campaign. They wanted to destroy me, legally, financially, permanently. My phone buzzed on my desk. Mara's name flashed on the screen. I couldn't answer, not yet. I spent the rest of the day locked in my office. The lawsuit spread across my desk like a death sentence. Every line felt like a knife, every accusation designed to make me feel small, guilty, worthless. By evening, I forced myself to leave. The office was empty by then, staff gone home, unaware of the storm about to hit. On my way out, I glanced at the calendar on the wall. February 1st. Exactly 1 year since Astrid's televised stunt. It felt like the universe was mocking me. That weekend, I agreed to attend a charity fundraiser Mara had invited me to months ago. I didn't want to go, but I needed a break, even if it meant pretending for a few hours that my life wasn't falling apart. The ballroom was packed, glittering gowns and pressed suits everywhere. I barely made it through small talk and forced smiles when I heard a voice behind me. Well, if it isn't the ghost of the family. I turned. Dorian, Astrid's childhood friend. One of the few people who had ever looked at me like I was human back then. He looked awkward, drink in hand, shifting his weight like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, clearing his throat. "Trust me," I replied flatly. "Neither did I." We exchanged small talk, surface-level pleasantries, until, halfway through his second drink, he leaned in and muttered, "You know, I probably shouldn't say this, but last Christmas, your dad was ranting about offshore accounts, said something about needing to clean up before the IRS got curious." I blinked. He kept talking, voice low. "I didn't catch much, just that your mom funneled donations through some charity that doesn't exist. Something about Cayman accounts, I think." He laughed awkwardly. Typical Marlowe drama, right? My heart raced beneath my calm expression. When I got home that night, I sat at my desk, lawsuit still staring at me like a loaded weapon. But this time, something felt different. I opened my laptop. In my inbox, a message from Dorian. "Hey, not sure if it matters, but I found the name of that offshore firm. Let me know if you want it." I stared at the screen, a slow, cold smile creeping across my face. They think they can sue me into silence? They're about to learn who I've become. That thought burned inside me for weeks after Dorian's email arrived in my inbox. A tiny ember I fanned into something sharp and dangerous. It wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about ending the game they'd been playing with me since the day they threw me out. By the fall of 2020, I had clawed SafePaw back from the edge. It wasn't easy. I lost clients, employees, even friends who had quietly distanced themselves when the lawsuits hit the press. But the business survived, and so did I. Most nights now, I worked late in Quentin's law office, tucked away in downtown Dallas, surrounded by stacks of folders and spreadsheets instead of pet food and customer orders. Quentin, my attorney, one of the few people who hadn't abandoned me when the headlines turned ugly, sat across from me, glasses low on his nose, scanning a spreadsheet like it held the secrets of the universe. "You're sure you want to go this route?" he asked without looking up. "I've spent years letting them pull the strings," I said quietly. "It ends now." He slid a file across the desk. Inside were copies of the documents Dorian had referenced, the ones that had taken Quentin weeks to quietly gather through legal backchannels. Tax records, bank transfers, letters of donation that funneled money through fake charities, straight into offshore accounts in the Caymans. At the bottom of one page, in crisp black ink, was my signature, forged neatly beside financial authorizations I'd never seen before. "They used your name in several shell companies," Quentin said. "You were listed as co-signer on at least 3 charitable foundations that don't exist." I swallowed hard, my pulse roaring in my ears. They hadn't just stolen my reputation. They had stolen my name, my identity, again, to launder money. "This is enough to sink them," Quentin continued. "Tax fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud, and with Dorian's testimony—" He didn't need to finish. I stared at the papers, each line of numbers and fake signatures like a nail in the coffin they'd built for themselves. Weeks passed as we quietly prepared the case. I stayed off social media. I didn't respond to comments, rumors, or press inquiries. Until one Thursday morning, when everything erupted again. I was in the middle of reviewing invoices at SafePaw when my phone buzzed uncontrollably. Dozens of missed calls, texts, emails, all with the same subject line. Breaking, Hillary Marlowe accused of blackmail. I clicked one of the articles, my heart sinking as I read. In an exclusive statement, Sources close to the Marlowe family claim their estranged daughter has attempted to extort money in exchange for keeping private family matters secret. The family is heartbroken by her actions and intends to take appropriate legal steps. A video clip played beneath the headline. My parents' attorney stood outside the courthouse, solemn-faced, saying, "We had hoped to resolve this privately. Unfortunately, Ms. Marlowe has left us no choice." My hands trembled as I set the phone down. They'd leaked the lawsuit to the media, twisted the narrative again, painted me as the villain, the unstable daughter desperate for money. By noon, my inbox was filled with hateful messages, news outlets requesting statements, clients asking if I was involved in criminal activity. Quentin called that afternoon. "You saw it?" he asked. "They're trying to force my hand," I said quietly. "They want you to fold." I looked out the office window, the Dallas skyline sharp against the evening sky. "Well," I said slowly, "they're about to learn something new about me." That night, Quentin and I sat across from each other in his office, documents and digital files spread across the table like weapons ready for battle. I glanced at him, my voice calm but edged with steel. "Enough games. It's time to end this." Those words were the last thing I told Quentin before we stepped into the storm. For weeks we prepared. Every falsified signature, every shady email, every document they'd buried, I gathered them like weapons, brick by brick. Quentin stayed late with me, night after night, tightening every legal knot until there wasn't a single thread left loose. Then December arrived, cold and sharp, and with it, an invitation. Astrid's engagement party. It was everywhere. Glossy magazines, social media, society pages. The crown jewel of the Marlowe family's perfect image, the Ashbury Grand Hotel, the most expensive ballroom in Dallas. Hundreds of guests, politicians, CEOs, high society names, the perfect stage. That night, I stood outside the Grand's glowing entrance, the winter air biting against my skin. I wore a simple black fitted dress, no glitter, no diamonds, a deliberate contrast to the silk and shine waiting inside. As I stepped through the doors, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and carefully curated smiles. Music floated over the low hum of conversation. No one noticed me at first, a ghost moving through a sea of masks. But that wouldn't last. I walked slowly, past faces I knew too well, past strangers who only knew the version of me my family had sold to the tabloids. At the front of the room, beneath 1,000 sparkling lights, Astrid stood in white, radiant, her fiancé smiling at her side. The music softened as she took the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began sweetly. "It means everything to celebrate this next chapter, surrounded by family and friends." I waited until the applause died down. Then I stepped forward. Heads turned. Whispers rippled like a wave. I stopped a few feet from the stage, meeting Astrid's eyes. Her smile faltered. From my clutch, I pulled a black envelope, sealed in red wax. "Forgive the interruption," I said, voice clear and even, "but I thought the truth deserved a place at tonight's celebration." The room fell silent. I handed the envelope to Dorian, Astrid's fiancé, standing near the edge of the stage. "Open it." He hesitated, then broke the seal and unfolded the papers. His eyes scanned the pages, widening with every line. Astrid shifted beside him, her posture stiff. "Ladies and gentlemen," I continued, "inside that envelope is proof that Astrid Marlowe never completed medical school, that her career, her credentials, all lies, lies she built using my name." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I wasn't finished. From my bag, I pulled a slim flash drive. Quentin, standing near the back, gave a small nod. The projector behind the stage flickered to life. One by one, the documents appeared on screen. Forged signatures, falsified tax records, charity donations laundered through offshore accounts, emails with my name attached, twisting me into their lies. Each slide cracked the Marlowe family's pristine mask. Corinne's face drained of color. Gareth stood rigid, jaw tight. The final image lingered, a spreadsheet mapping every fraudulent dollar. The room erupted. Guests whispered behind their hands. Some stared openly. Some quietly slipped toward the exits. Then the ballroom doors swung open. 2 federal agents entered, followed by 2 IRS officers. They moved fast, cutting through the crowd. "Corinne Marlowe and Gareth Marlowe," one agent announced. "You're under arrest for tax fraud, money laundering, and falsification of financial records." Corinne straightened, already slipping into her well-rehearsed calm. "This is a mistake," she said smoothly. "We'll clear this up." The agent didn't flinch. Gareth said nothing. He didn't even lift his head. Handcuffs clicked shut around their wrists. The crowd watched in stunned silence. I stood still, heart pounding, not with fear, but something colder. Vindication. As they passed me, Corinne's gaze met mine, sharp, disbelieving. I didn't look away. I walked to the microphone, the ballroom silent but for my steps. I took one breath. "You erased me from this family," I said quietly, "but tonight I erased your lies." I left the stage without looking back. At the door, I heard Astrid's voice behind me. Soft, desperate. "Wait! Hillary, please!" I glanced over my shoulder long enough to see her collapse, white dress crumpling around her like wilted petals. I kept walking. They thought they'd buried me. But tonight, I buried them. "You erased me from this family, but tonight, I erased your lies." That sentence echoed in every news headline the next morning. It was everywhere. Television, newspapers, social media. Clips of my parents being handcuffed. Snapshots of Astrid collapsing on that polished marble floor. Their fall was the city's favorite spectacle, and I had set the match. For the first time in years, the world wasn't pointing fingers at me. Instead, it stared wide-eyed at the wreckage of the Marlowe family. But victory, I quickly learned, wasn't sweet. It was hollow. The days that followed blurred together. Reporters camped outside my apartment. Strangers sent flowers and apology notes. Others sent hate mail, convinced I had destroyed a good, respectable family. I turned off my phone, pulled the curtains shut, went back to working at SafePaw quietly, rebuilding order in the only part of my life I could control. On the 3rd night, I sat alone in my living room, a cup of tea untouched in my hands, when the knock came. It was nearly midnight. I opened the door to find Astrid standing there, or what was left of her. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed red, mascara smeared down her cheeks. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her hands trembling at her sides. "Please," she whispered. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite her in. She stood there on the doorstep, the cold night pressing in around us. "I have nothing left," she said, voice breaking. "They're gone. The money, the name, everything." Tears slid down her face as she looked at me, desperate, defeated. "You're my sister," she said, voice cracking. "Please, Hillary, forgive me. I didn't mean for any of this. I didn't know how to stop." I felt something shift in my chest. Not pity, not hate. Something colder, sadder. "You had choices," I said quietly. "Every step of the way, you had choices." She shook her head, a sob escaping her lips. "It was them," she insisted. "Mom and Dad. They made me believe you were the problem, that you were dangerous. I didn't realize until it was too late." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could have lied, told her I forgave her, pretended this was the ending she wanted. Instead, I took a breath and said the only truth left between us. "You didn't destroy me, Astrid, but you tried." Her shoulders collapsed, the weight of everything finally crushing her. She fell to her knees right there in the hallway, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't move. Eventually, Mara showed up, her face grim, Dorian trailing behind her. They stayed back, letting Astrid crumble without interference. The next day, Mara texted me. "Astrid's under psychiatric watch. She tried to hurt herself. They'll keep her there for now." I stared at the message longer than I should have. I wasn't surprised. That night, I stood by my apartment window, watching the Dallas skyline stretch far into the distance, city lights flickering like scattered memories. I thought about how easy it would have been to become them, to twist my pain into something destructive, to let it rot me from the inside out. Instead, I had done the only thing they never expected. I had survived. I whispered to the empty room, voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped letting them destroy me. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped letting them destroy me. Those words stayed with me long after the headlines faded and the cameras moved on to the next scandal. It's strange how quickly the world moves when you're no longer at the center of its spectacle. In the weeks after that night at the Ashbury Grand, the Marlowe name became a cautionary tale. Corinne and Gareth's court dates were scheduled, the charges stacked against them like dominoes: fraud, tax evasion, identity theft. The press ran updates every morning, but by afternoon, the city had turned its attention elsewhere. And me? I quietly picked up the pieces of the life they hadn't managed to shatter. Mara started stopping by the diner again, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes just herself. One gray January morning, I sat across from her at our usual booth, the hum of conversation around us comforting in its ordinariness. "You know," she said, stirring sugar into her coffee, "you could have burned everything down, but you didn't." I gave her a tired smile. "Maybe I did. Just not the way they expected." She reached across the table, her fingers wrapping gently around mine. "You made it out, Hillary. That's what matters." It wasn't until I got home that evening, my apartment unusually quiet, that I let her words sink in. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was breathing, finally, without the weight of their shadows pressing on my chest. A few days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Dorian. "You did what no one else could. Thank you." Short, simple, enough. The Marlowe estate had been sold at auction, the mansion stripped bare like a forgotten ruin. I hadn't gone near it until that morning, when I found myself driving past the iron gates, now rusting, the hedges overgrown. I pulled over, sitting in silence, as I stared at what used to be my childhood home. The windows were dark, the driveway empty. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. Later that week, I walked into SafePaw's new storefront on Maple Avenue. We'd finally reopened, smaller but sturdier. No flash, no headlines, just the work I'd built with my own hands, brick by brick. Quentin met me there, carrying a folder. "You're officially free," he said, handing me the papers. "Everything's cleared. You own this business outright. No lawsuits, no liens." I took the documents, running my fingers over the embossed seal at the bottom. "For the first time," I said quietly, "I'm not surviving. I'm living." He smiled at me, that rare, genuine smile of his. "You earned it." As the afternoon light slanted across the pavement, I stood outside the storefront, watching customers come and go. Life wasn't perfect. The scars hadn't vanished. Astrid remained under psychiatric care. Our parents' trials were still pending. Some people still whispered when they heard my name. But none of it owned me anymore. I walked back inside, the bell above the door chiming softly, and closed it behind me. Looking back, I realize now, this wasn't a story about revenge. It was about survival, about reclaiming the parts of myself that my own family tried to erase. If you've ever felt like you weren't enough, if you've ever been told you're too broken, too messy, too much, let me remind you, you don't need anyone's permission to live your truth. I spent years trying to prove my worth to people who would never see it. And the moment I stopped fighting for their approval, I finally started fighting for myself. Family can love you, but they can also lie to you. They can lift you up or tear you down. But at the end of the day, it's not their version of you that matters. It's who you choose to become. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from people you thought would never hurt you? If so, how did you find your way back to yourself? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this video touched you, if it made you think about your own family, your own scars, drop a number 1 in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. Or, if this video made you uncomfortable, if you didn't like it, tell me why. Let's talk about it. This channel is a place for real stories, real emotions, and real conversations. And hey, if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button